Hello, welcome to Let's Talk. I'm Salley Gibney. Do you have a story inside of you, a story that you want to tell, but you don't know how to get started? I know I do. What do we do? How do we go about it? Well, my guest today is going to tell us how to get going. Hi, Sue Leonard. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Sally.
I'm so delighted you're here. Now, first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I have been a resident of Vermont for probably more than 30 years. I came to college in Vermont and never went back, never left, and lived in the Manchester area for probably 30 years. I moved about 6 years ago to Steamboat Springs, Colorado, because my husband had gotten a job at Colorado Mountain College.
Oh, I see. All right. So now how is it, and tell us about your son, Mark.
I have one son. He went to Burton, and he graduated in, I believe, 2010, and he is currently living in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
And he's in filming, isn't he?
He is. He's an independent filmmaker, and currently he worked for a company and is currently doing full-time freelance work in post-production.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
He's an awfully nice guy.
Yes.
I remember him when he was at Burton.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, Sue, I want to talk about writing a story. I know, tell us what you do. What is your
Well,
business?
I have worked in the independent publishing industry since 1998. And there have been vast changes since 1998. We've gone from a traditional model in publishing to an independent model. And that change has allowed anyone to be able to publish, whether it's an ebook or a book in print because of print on demand. There have been so many changes in the publishing industry, which is really exciting for the average person who normally would not get published by a huge traditional publishing house. So there are a lot of people who are taking the opportunity to write their own stories because it is now possible. And what has also made that possible is the development of technology so that you can handle a lot of the process by yourself.
But I know, I understand that, but someone like me who's not really technical, and I don't know where to begin. How does someone start? How do you start to write? What do you...
The first thing is write. I was a non-writer.
Really?
I mean, I wasn't an English major. I wasn't a teacher. But I knew I had a story that I wanted to tell. So I started going to a writers group when I moved to Steamboat Springs, Colorado. And they have a huge community of writers there. And I started going weekly to a writing group. And I sat there for 2 years and didn't write a thing.
Really?
Because I wanted to learn about what makes a good story. Some people are natural writers. I was not. And
Really?
I learned all that I could, and then I decided, okay, if you're going to do this, you've got to do it. Just jump in. Well, as soon as I jumped in, I found out that the story just flowed.
Really?
And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. And I also just really immersed myself in the writing culture by talking with other writers about their experiences. And I had worked since 1998 in the independent publishing industry, so I was very familiar with all that had gone on.
You had done fulfillment services.
I had.
And do you continue to do that?
I have morphed my business into e-marketing for independent publishers. Once the industry got up and going, the technology became available. And what I found through my business is that independent publishers really needed to learn something about how to market over the internet.
Yeah.
Because that's how a lot of these publications are sold, through e-commerce.
Now let's get started. Let's back up a little bit and talk about how someone like myself, how do you start? You just said you just write. You write and write and write.
Yeah, you do write. That's what it really takes. And then you would need to get an editor. And there's so many steps, but there's a lot of freelance professionals now who used to work in the traditional publishing business have now become freelancers. So there is a lot of assistance that you can get.
By going online and
by going
Googling?
online. Yeah, exactly.
Really?
Yeah, and talking with experienced people who have written, who can steer you. I don't know if there's any writing groups in this area.
I don't know if
there used to be one, I believe, down in Shaftesbury, and I'm not sure if they're still
But it might be sort of something for someone to do, to get some friends together who are interested in writing and just write and
Absolutely. I think that the group that I was with had experienced writers in it. But I also think it just takes getting together a group of people who are interested in writing. They all are probably writing their own stories. Reading your writing and doing some critique. Which is basically what this group was that I went to.
So you listen to each other.
Give feedback about, you know, what's missing or whether the storyline is flowing.
Or whether it would be something interesting.
Whether it would be something
that other people would like to read
what you could add
about.
into the story that would heighten the interest of the story. And I think that really is what it takes, because when you write, you're sort of a lone soldier out there.
Yeah, exactly.
And to have somebody to bounce your ideas off of and get critique from is very, very helpful,
important.
very valuable.
And also just to write. You know, I mean, even if it's not going to become a bestseller or, you know, but just to start out that way and see where it leads.
Right. And I think that I think that a lot of people make the mistake in saying, this is lousy writing. It is going to be lousy writing for a while, but you have to purge yourself of that writing. And then you can go back and refine and edit and all of that. It's not going to be, it takes many drafts. And to think that it's going to come out perfect the first time is very, very unrealistic.
Did you ever see the movie Finding Forrester? And in that, the author, the writer who was in there, he said, just write and write and write, and don't go back and correct. Just keep writing.
Yes.
And then you can go back. But as you're writing, don't correct it. Just keep on going.
Which is exactly what I did, is I sat down and I wrote, and I probably wrote for about 3 months.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, I've got it. This is done. Then I went to the writers group and started reading it out loud every week. And I found I was nowhere near finished. But that taking that time to read it out loud to someone else, to a group of people, helped me so much by their feedback, and that's part of the process.
Yeah, and also your own feedback. I mean, hearing yourself read it, I'm sure that there are times you say, ooh, you know, that's not right. You know,
reading it out loud and reading it silently are two different things, and you catch so much when you read it out loud.
Which is really, and today, I mean, there's so much out there, as you said, there's so much online, on the internet, and all this kind of things. And how do you get started with, now, I have to mention, you have a blog that you do.
I do.
Every day.
Every day.
And I can't
Sometimes
believe.
I let myself off the hook on weekends.
Oh, I don't know. But how do you, I mean, every day you have another special idea, you have pictures, how do you do that?
Well, I started out sharing information about the independent publishing industry. I've written 1,460 blogs within, I guess, 3 to 4 years. I just have one of these minds that doesn't ever stop, obviously.
Do you ever sit down and just
But
relax?
I actually didn't. I started a blog to promote my business. But what I found out is I love to write. And it was at that point I decided, you have had this story all your life you've wanted to tell.
Yeah.
And I was enjoying writing so much, I decided it's time to tell it.
To tell that story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And but my blog covers all sorts of things, and there's a lot of great information about the independent publishing industry on there, but also about personally fulfilling
But just life.
things.
I mean, you write so much about life, but you pick up these pictures from all around the world. I mean, it's an incredible blog, and I will share it with all of you out there when it'll be online, because it's really a joy to read, and it gives so much information. So we'll definitely do that. I really totally enjoy it. Now, so what is going on in the tech world now today, so that you don't have to go to a publisher, and you can, how do you do that?
Well, what is really great about publishing today is it used to be that when you wanted to publish a book, you had to have 50,000 copies of a book printed up.
Really?
Yes, or some large number like that. Whether you were going to sell them or not, who knows? And they may sit in a warehouse and never be sold. But today there's print on demand, which means that a book is not printed until it is ordered.
Really?
One at a time. And that, first of all, for sustainability. And we don't have to cut down so many trees anymore to print these books that might be sitting in warehouses.
Right.
They are printed as they are ordered.
So
that has helped with the sustainability of the planet so much. The other thing is ebooks. You don't even have to have a book printed. It can be all digital content.
Oh my gosh.
And so many people are becoming ebook authors. And they never print a book in print. They just stick with an ebook.
Wow.
With my own book, I have the option of an audio book, an ebook, and a book in print.
Wow.
I wanted it available in all three formats, but that's not necessary. You can also, with the ebook, it really cuts down on your costs.
I was just going to ask you about that.
And the initial outlay,
yeah,
because it is all digital. You can type your book in a Word document, just plain old Microsoft Word document, and have it formatted for an ebook, and make it available for sale on the internet.
And what is the cost for all of this? I mean, is there
That's a really
layout?
Complicated question that I really can't answer, because there's so many different options of ways to go.
Really?
Yeah, it really takes, and also it depends on how much you want to do by yourself, whether you're going to do your own graphics, whether you're going, whether you're really technically savvy and can do it all yourself, or whether you need assistance.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to put a price, just off the top of my head, of how much it all costs. But an ebook, and especially an ebook, is good for a first-time author who doesn't know what the response to their book is going to be.
Sure.
And it's
and you
not
can
a
always
huge
bring
investment.
it to you can bring it to another level. It doesn't always have to be an ebook. You can bring it into print or whatever.
Right. And a lot of people will start with an ebook, and if they get a really good response, they decide, I'm going to make this available in print on demand and make it available in a paperback.
Right.
And then it gets printed one at a time as it's ordered.
Yeah.
Such as through Amazon or something like that.
Which is amazing. And there is just so many aspects to it. How do people find out these different steps?
A lot of it can be done, you can find out online. You can Google anything these days,
I know.
But there's also a lot of, independent publishing is a very active industry in Colorado. And there's also, throughout different states, there are publishing associations, which was very, very helpful to me. I joined the Colorado Independent Publishers Association, and actually, when I was here in Vermont, before I moved, I was a member of the, it's called IPNY, Independent Publishers of New England.
Oh, I see.
Vermont is such a small state. I don't believe at this time they have their own publishing association, but they have a regional, which is IPNY, Independent Publishers of New England. And you can get a lot of assistance and resources by joining one of those groups.
I see.
Which I highly, highly recommend.
For anyone who's interested.
Yes,
Yeah.
and their whole thing is educating too.
Uh-huh.
And I know in Colorado, it's been some years since I've been involved with the New England publishing, independent publishers. Yeah. But they offer seminars even.
Which is great.
For, $15, $20.
Yeah.
And they bring in professionals to talk about different parts of the process.
Of the process.
Yeah.
Which is great. So people can go look that up online and take a look if they're interested in doing this kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, talking with other people who have been through the process really helps a tremendous amount too.
And it's helpful, I'm sure, even through here in Manchester, the North Shire Bookstore or whatever. They have so many resources available.
They certainly do.
It's a really
because
wonderful
they have
resource.
an espresso book machine
Yeah.
at the bookstore here in Manchester.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that they have people that they
can help
that provide resources.
Now, I'd like to talk a little bit about your book.
Sure.
It's Gift of a Lifetime, which is just, look at this, isn't this beautiful? Tell us about it. Tell us about the story.
Okay, in a nutshell, it's a story of multicultural love, faith, healing, and life lessons. It's a story I've always wanted to tell. It's not a story that I was anxious to share about myself. Mm-hmm. It has some medical history in it. Uh-huh. It is not a large part of the story. Uh-huh. My whole thing is we had a woman who came to our family when I was, as a result of my birth.
Now talk a little bit about that, about your physical piece.
Okay. I am a twin. Mm-hmm. And I was born, my sister and I were born prematurely, and I was a 2-pound baby.
Oh, a tiny little thing.
And I had my sister was perfectly fine. I don't want to tell the whole story.
Yeah.
But I had some cardiac issues. Uh-huh. Fortunately, I grew up in the Baltimore area, and Johns Hopkins Hospital, University, I was a pioneering heart patient.
Wow.
And they did some very, very pioneering surgery on me, which was extremely successful. And that's part of the story. But also, I attribute my good health that I have had throughout my life to a woman who came to our family as a result of my mother needed help because she had 2 premature babies and one was very, very ill, myself. And this woman became part of our family and was with our family for more than 40 years. And she had wonderful advice about faith, about life, and I share some of her words, a lot of her words, in my story.
Could you just tell, I've read the story, so it's a wonderful, wonderful story.
Thank you.
I love it. But could you just give us a little background on her?
Yes, I could. She actually, my parents found out about her, and she was put in a orphanage. Well, there was no room in an orphanage, so they put her in a mental institution. Wow. Because there were no beds available, and there was nothing wrong with her mentally. And she lived for many, many years in a mental institution. Wow. I don't know if that's a politically correct term. But
well, that's what they were.
Finally, her niece was trying to get her out, and she had heard about our family, that my mother was looking for help, household help. And my parents hired her, sight unseen. And she showed up at the door for work, and she was a little African-American woman. And as it turned out, she became the greatest blessing to our family that we could have ever had. And she stayed with us. She truly became part of our family. Yes. Yeah. And when people hear my life story, they say, oh, wasn't that difficult? Wasn't that hard? No, it really was not. I was a very, very fortunate person who had
Lots of love.
so much love,
Yeah.
and parents with very positive attitudes.
And a wonderful sister.
Wonderful sister, wonderful brothers. And I wanted to tell, she was such a beloved person that I have always, our whole family has always wanted to tell her story.
Yeah.
And that was what was important to me.
And that was what was
not
driving
my
you.
story.
Yeah.
It was sharing her story.
And her wisdom. I mean, the things
Incredible
that, reading the
wisdom.
book, the things that she came out with at the right time. I mean, they were so appropriate.
Yes.
And so inspiring that.
Had a third grade education,
Wow.
but just was filled with wisdom.
Yeah.
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 Well, just a beautiful, beautiful story. And I certainly recommend that everyone read it because and they can go online and read this, correct?
Yes, they can. And I'm really proud to say that the book just won 2 awards. It won second prize for the audiobook.
Oh, wonderful.
I narrated the audiobook. And
how was that? Now, when you were narrating it, did you, because she had a wonderful way of speaking.
I spoke in her dialect, which came very easy to me because I heard it for 40 years.
Your whole life.
You know, almost 40 years, not quite.
Now, could you say something to us, just to get a little something that she would say, to give us a sense of that? Can you do that? That would be so neat.
Oh gosh, Sally.
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but
I should pick out a.
Would you?
I don't have my glasses.
Oh. Well, just something that she would say in the morning or something.
Well, her favorite expression was "Lord of mercy." Everything was "Lord of mercy."
She was very religious too, wasn't she? She had a really strong connection to God, didn't she?
She truly did. Yeah, she did, and it came out in very sort of almost unorthodox ways, you know, and that I have a very strong faith that has been always very quiet. But I found out how much faith I have when I wrote the book.
When you were writing the book, yeah.
It just came out. It was like, where did this come from? Well, a lot of it was Fanny's words.
Yeah.
And I surprised myself in my writing. And I'd write things that I didn't expect to say, but they were her words.
Yeah.
After being with her for so many years.
What a gift. What a beautiful,
yes.
beautiful gift.
Yes.
I mean, she just was such you know, isn't it amazing how life happens?
Yes.
And how people come into our lives and we really don't know what to expect, and if we're just open to it, it really, really happens.
Yes. And that's why I named the book it's called Gift of a Lifetime, because there were so many unexpected gifts that I have had throughout my life that I never really considered until I sat down and wrote the book. And there's a lot of gifts I've had in my life.
I think, you know, I don't think you're alone in that. I think so often, so many of us have so many gifts that we just sort of take for granted and don't even realize. And that's why a gratitude list is so wonderful, because if you write down what you're grateful for, you can kind of look at the things that you do have.
Right, and it forces you to look at the little things.
Exactly, and those are the most important things.
It's not always these big things that are the gifts in our lives.
Exactly, and it's just a really, and I'm just so thrilled that you're here. You know, it's so wonderful to see you after all this time.
Thank you.
I just am so inspired by you and your writing, and I'm hoping that our audience will look at your blog and also go online and take a look at the story of your book. And once again, will you tell us the name of your book? Is?
It's Gift of a Lifetime, Finding Fulfilling Things in the Unexpected. And I found out, as I wrote, is one of the gifts in my life is the ability to write.
Yeah.
Which I didn't ever know that I could write, you know, write it.
It's amazing what we have inside and we don't even know about it.
Yes.
You know, it's really wonderful.
Yes.
I just thank you so much for being here.
Oh, you're very welcome.
This has been absolutely wonderful.
Our household was always steeped in conventional holiday traditions. But once we moved into our third childhood home of modern design, We did have a most unconventional decoration every year, an upside-down Christmas tree. Our father had gotten the idea from our Uncle King that modern homes with high ceilings and exposed beams were the perfect place to hang an upside-down Christmas tree. The tree trunk was nailed at the peak of the ceiling to the beam. It hung like an inverted triangle, lit like an oversized chandelier. Now in our teenage years, when girls are especially tuned into what others might think, our yearly Christmas tree gave my sister and me much angst. What did our friends think of us and our father's idea of the perfect Christmas tree? It was a humiliating thought. "Dad," we'd beg, "can we please, please, please just have a regular Christmas tree this year?" Even Jan's tears never worked. As we drove along from house to house, Jan began voicing her disdain for some of our Christmas rituals. I inched a little closer to the front seat to listen in. "Fanny," Jan said as she steered the car along, "I love Christmas, but I hate that our tree is upside down. It makes me just want to run and hide when our friends come to the house. The tinsel slides right off, so Dad throws it up there on the tree in big clumps. It looks stupid, and I hate getting up so early on Christmas, too." "John, why you get up early on Christmas? Does your mama make you get up early to celebrate?" Fanny inquired. "No, Fanny, it's Sue's fault," Jan replied. Fanny turned to me in the back seat and raised her voice. "Sue, what time you get up on Christmas morning?" As was usual, Jan didn't even give me a chance to speak. She piped right up. "She gets us all up at 5 o'clock every single year. I hate it. We all do," she pouted. "We tell her to go back to sleep, but she won't listen. She turns on the Christmas tree lights and the hi-fi with the Christmas carols. Then she starts pestering each one of us by jumping on the bed till finally we may as well get up," Jan said in a pouty tone. "John," Fanny's voice became quieter, "it won't hurt you none to get up real early one day of the year. Little Sue, she probably so happy to be alive, to spend Christmas with y'all. She can't wait for Sancty Claus."
My next guest is a very special lady who is a Vermonter, by the way, and she's written a wonderful story about someone very, very important in her life. Welcome, Donna Dearborn. How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
It's so good to have you here.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
It's just, I mean, your story is so wonderful, and I especially love it because I was at your reading, and I also have read the book, so it means a lot to me to have you here. Now, tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I grew up in a very active family in Brattleboro, Vermont. We were outdoors in the woods and in the mountains and playing all sports from an early age. And then as I grew older, I've had this curiosity and kind of a wanderlust to explore other places. Even though I always thought Vermont was a great place, I really wanted to compare it to other places. So I ended up in Montana and Arizona and even in North Carolina and outside the country in South Korea, doing a wide variety of jobs. And I think...
What about schooling? What was your education?
I went to Springfield College in Massachusetts, and I ended up with a major in environmental science and math. And but then really, I think my real passion has been in exercise science. So I went on to get a master's degree in exercise physiology, and then also a degree in biochemistry.
Wow!
And so I think my jobs have focused more in the exercise physiology, kind of fitness and health. regions more so, and outdoor recreation, I think.
And now,
even.
where have you taken that? What have you done with that?
Well, I've been a fitness director, and I've been an outward bound instructor, so I've led trips of canoeing and backpacking and winter camping and dog sledding all over, and taught tennis. I've also done jobs a little bit outside my training, such as teaching English in South Korea.
Oh, how long were you there?
I was there almost a year. And that was a wonderful experience, to experience a different culture and to really appreciate Vermont even more than ever.
I'm sure. Now, what led you to South Korea?
Well, to experience a different culture, and the first job offer came from there when I applied to China and Taiwan and Japan and South Korea, and the first offer came from there. Hello, Donna, you want to teach English in South Korea? And so
you said okay.
It sounded like it was a good job, and also it was an adventure. And adventures are important to me.
Yeah. Now, how old were you when you did this?
Well, that one was older than average, older than most of the other teachers there. So I was 40 years old.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
I was 40.
Yeah.
So I wasn't I wasn't that young, but maybe I could appreciate the experience even more.
And you brought a lot of experience to it, the job, and I
Yes.
think that's important.
I think
Yeah.
yes. So I was adored by my students in Korea, and they were just so generous and wonderful to me.
Yeah, I know it's an amazing experience. Our son taught English in China for 2 years, and I know it was an amazing experience for them.
Right.
So now, what are you doing now? What is your job right now?
Well, I'm still active outdoors a lot with my own outdoor activities, but one of the things I really love is helping other people realize their dreams of reaching the top of a certain mountain or hiking all of the 4,000 footers in New Hampshire. So I just love that. So recently I helped one of my friends celebrate her 80th birthday by hiking to the top of Mount Moosilauke.
Oh, you're kidding. Now,
And
where is that?
That's just in New Hampshire, not too far away in New Hampshire. It's a beautiful mountain, a very wonderful summit, and we had reached the top of Mount Katahdin in Maine for her 75th birthday. So we were trying to do something that was just within her grasp at age 80, and we had a wonderful day. So those are the things. I do have my own accounting and tax preparation business too.
Oh, wow.
And I think that's a very different thing to balance out the outdoors kind of lifestyle, but my heart is really in the outdoors, in all ways of kayaking and canoeing and hiking and skiing.
Now, these are things that your father encouraged, didn't he? Now, I'd like to get to talk about your book. And the name of your book is Every Sunday. How did you come to name the book Every Sunday?
Well, when I was going away to college as a freshman, my dad said, I was the first one of 3 children to leave the home. He said, I'll write to you on Sunday. Will you do the same? And I didn't even have to think about it more than 1 second. I said, sure, Dad, I will. So I don't know if we envisioned what that would become, but we wrote to each other every Sunday all through college, all those 4 years, and he was faithful. There was always a letter on a Tuesday, probably, waiting for me, but we never stopped. And we carried that on until he had a stroke so that he could no longer write, and that was the only thing that stopped us. So when I traveled to Indonesia and Thailand, and when I was in South Korea, there was a letter that would come from him every Sunday, no matter where I was, because I would always leave him my addresses and my itinerary, where I was traveling and working, and the final dates which he could send these letters, and he was so faithful.
Oh, I mean, that touches me so. Just the idea that both of you did this and you continued it. What a beautiful, beautiful, and you've saved all those letters.
I've saved so many of them. I feel really fortunate that I have many of them. Maybe in the early days I didn't save them. When you're young, you take things for granted like that.
Sure.
But as I grew older, I realized that I had no ordinary father. And,
absolutely.
I had a treasure, and I've just cherished him all the years. Because I realized it's not a usual thing for a father and daughter to do.
No, well, I think the relationship between a father and a daughter is very special. And my father died when I was 12, so I think your story touches me so because it's something that really means a lot to me. But I think for so many of us, what an example this is, you know, to think about doing something like that, to do something, that connection. So talk about your dad, because I know you had an incredible relationship with your father.
Right. It meant so much to receive these letters. And when I grew up, he was a recreation director in Brattleboro, and a very active, fit, strong man who was just curious about what was around every bend when we would go out hiking. So he had us outdoors, and he had us involved in all kinds of sports and activities since we were young. And it was just so much fun because he participated in all of those things too. He didn't just, you know,
he wasn't just on the sidelines.
Yeah, he wasn't just coaching us or telling us what to do. And he really led by example so much in lots of ways. So
I know from reading the book now, he was very highly thought of, wasn't he? He touched so many lives.
He was.
So many people.
Right. He was a father figure to so many kids. There were a lot of young boys that didn't have fathers, they didn't have fathers that were present in their lives. And so he filled a big gap there. He was really there for them, like playing ping pong at the recreation center, just being a listening ear.
Oh, which is so important.
That's right. I mean, that was one of the best qualities for me as his daughter, that I knew he was there. He was always there to listen to me, and he listened in a way that people don't listen that way. You know, I knew, you know, he would take his time, and he wouldn't come out with an answer. And often he would just ask me another question or two so that I could figure out the answer. But, but you could tell he just really, he cared in that way, and he took the time. You know, he really gave me time.
That's a lesson for all of us, because how often when you're thinking or talking with someone and you're not really listening, you're thinking of what you're going to say next rather than listening to what they're saying. So I can tell that you're a listener. Yes,
I try to be, yes.
You got that from him.
I believe so. He was such a great role model, and I paid attention to him, and I gained a lot. So I'm forever grateful that I had Frank Dearborn as my father. How lucky am I?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So now, did you ever think that you would be writing a book? I mean, was this ever in the back of your mind, or was it something that? How did it evolve?
Well, I always thought my dad was an extraordinary person, and I could see that he was just so loved and respected, even just outside of our family. And I always wanted to know, like, what made him tick and feel so. But I never really thought about writing a book about it. So when he had a stroke at age 75, and he recovered well, but 3 months later he had a severe stroke. And he ended up in a nursing home because he needed care around the clock. And he no longer could walk, and he was in a wheelchair. And little by little, he spoke less and less. And that was just so devastating to me and to our whole family. It was so deeply sad. And so I needed to do something to really turn this into something a little bit more positive. So I started to write. And maybe the intention at that moment wasn't that it would become a book, but I started to write, and I never stopped writing. And I wrote stories from my childhood, everything that I could remember of the things that we had shared, and our adventures throughout our time together, which were many. I mean, I'm just so fortunate.
Just amazing, so many stories.
With the skiing and the hiking. And so I would share these stories with him in the nursing home. I would read them, or I would just tell him the stories, and I would watch him, and I would see his eyes light up, or I would see a smile come to his face, or he might even have some words, and sometimes he wouldn't. But even if there were no words, I knew that it meant so much to him, and it meant so much to me and my mother. It helped my mother to remember, wow, you know, we have
did this, we have these wonderful memories, so many wonderful things.
Right, we've had such a great life together, and right now it's so sad we can hardly bear it. But that did help us. It helped us day by day make it through that time. So I kept writing, and when my dad died, I really committed myself to this becoming something, and so I kept writing, and I put even more time than I had before that.
So you just kept writing and writing and writing?
Yes, well, it started as just vignettes. So I'd write a little story about an adventure, and then I would share it, and I would write another one. And I made a list of all of the things that I could write about, the things that would make us, remember the happy times and the nature of my dad, and so I kept writing them. And then they became, so I compiled it in a manuscript in a way that I thought that it went together, sort of chronological, and it was 550 pages.
Oh my goodness.
And it was enormous. And I knew that it was way too much. And that was the moment that when I had finished it, and I had finished it to the best of my ability, and I had poured myself into it maybe 10 hours a day, 6 days a week in the last couple of years.
Wow.
So I had this enormous pile of papers, and I found an editor, I found a person who was very interested in my story, and she agreed to help me. She would read the whole manuscript and then guide me and advise me on how we could
take a little bit off here, a little bit off there,
how
or
we
put
could
some things together. Had you ever written before? I mean, did you study writing or literature or anything like that? I mean,
I didn't study writing or literature. I taught English in South Korea, but that was conversational English, and that was really different from writing.
It wasn't anything about a book.
So I hadn't written, but I think what always helped me, I had written stories a lot of my life because of my father. It encouraged me. I would do a big adventure, maybe like skiing hut to hut in Norway or something, and he would say, "Are you going to write the story of that?" And so that was also in the back of my mind, that he always loved having me write my stories. So I had a lot of stories that I had written about our adventures, and a lot of them were with my dad.
Well, some of the stories of you, the adventures that you take climbing the mountains or the trails or whatever, and sometimes getting caught in a snowstorm, and the things that you had to do and how you survived. I mean, it's just amazing.
Right. Well, yeah, I had never written a book, but I felt when I was writing this that I was meant to be doing that. Like the whole time I felt like this is right, this is what I'm meant to do. So that helped me to continue, all the way to the end. And this, my editor, Kate Gleason, she was a wizard. She helped me restructure it. And that naturally helped me to go from the 550 pages to the 300 pages that we really wanted. So I'm grateful for her help.
Oh, I'm sure. No, I would imagine that anyone would need help doing it, doing this sort of thing.
Especially somebody who hasn't written, a book. But now I know a lot more than I did.
Do you think there's another book in you?
Well, there probably is, yes, because some of these adventures, there's 250 pages at least that were cut from this manuscript, and those are a lot of great adventures, but they just didn't seem to fit the theme of this book, and they weren't necessary.
Yeah.
So
I think it was also very touching to me, your story about how you did go to see your father almost every day. You see, and it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but it was so wonderful for him, and he kept his spirits up, didn't he, through this? He was an amazing man.
Right. He was a very positive, optimistic person, in general, and he was able to keep that during his days in the nursing home, which really helped us all. So I did visit him every Sunday.
With your dog?
With my dog, Gerda, who was a yellow lab, and I eventually had another yellow lab, Ella, who would go. Because my dad loved Gerda, he always took care of her. So that was very special, and luckily the nursing home just welcomes dogs. So that was another special touch. And so we did visit every Sunday, but also other days, many other days during the week. And so that's how the title came about, is from Every Sunday Letters and Every Sunday in the Nursing Home.
Yeah, well, it's just a very touching story, and I think a story that will touch many people in different ways. As I said, the adventures were just phenomenal. I mean, and your mom would come along with you on these trails, wouldn't she?
Yes, she was.
She
was involved in many of them, most of them. Yes, and she's 85 now, and I just helped her reach the top of a peak to celebrate Mount Willard in New Hampshire, to celebrate her 85th year.
Wow.
And so I'm really proud of her, and I'm really proud of her for embracing life after all of the sadness that we had with my dad in the nursing home, that she is walking every day and playing tennis, and she's kind of carrying on this Dearborn tradition that we've kind of
and that's
had.
Exactly what he would want you to do.
Exactly.
Because I'm sure he's up there watching and saying, "You go, girl."
Oh, I feel that he's so strongly with me, and I feel very, very fortunate about that. And he would want us to. So that's why we did need to eventually carry on with our activities, even though it was hard. you know, amidst
And
the
you
sadness.
brought him with you on some ventures after he was gone, didn't
Yes,
you?
after he was gone, he was so with me in Nepal and also in Patagonia. I could just feel his presence. And I did bring some of his ashes to Nepal, and that was just a special moment when I found the perfect place to just let some of them go amidst the grand Himalayas.
Wow.
Even though he had never been there. I don't know if he aspired to go there. So
Well, just from reading about him, I'm sure it was something that he would have loved.
he would have loved that.
Yeah.
He would have loved it because of the kind Sherpa people
Oh,
that
yeah.
I was, you know, that I met and that I walked with. He would just have, he would have just had a smile on his face the whole time, and they would have loved him
Yeah.
too.
Well, you know, it's interesting because people sense who you are, and they can sense the love and the caring, and you don't even have to know the language.
Exactly.
They definitely can sense it in a human being. Now, you have a niece, don't you?
I have a niece, yes.
And now you're taking her on some adventures.
I've taken her on some adventures too, right? Yep. So we're
Talk a little bit about that. I thought that was really the at the end of the book when you spoke about her and taking her on a little trip.
Yes, no, that's very special because I never had children. I've just had dogs as my kids. So she's
And they're wonderful. Dogs are wonderful.
Dogs are wonderful too, right? So
I think they're angels.
yes,
You know.
and so Mecca, we had wonderful times when we've been out, and we're trying to plan another one for next year too. But she
you
was.
were talking about it when you were together and it was raining.
Yes. Oh, we had an incredible thunderstorm that lasted forever. When luckily we had been able to get into our tents and we played the card game War so that we could take her mind off of the thunder and lightning storm. So, yeah, she was just had so much curiosity, just like my dad did. So she was game for anything.
Oh, that's great. How old is she?
She is now 15.
Wow.
Yes.
Time goes by, doesn't it?
I know. So my brother.
Can you grab her at some time to do another trip together?
We're working on it. I think it
Yeah.
works more these days if she could bring a friend, because that's what they love hanging out with their
They do.
their
They
their
do.
girlfriends. So
Yeah.
that's the way we might do it. So at first we each took a dog. She took one of her dogs and I had one of my dogs, and so that made it.
Now you bring
really-
your dog and she'll bring her girlfriend.
Yeah, that's right.
But that'll be fun. And that's a very special relationship, and those are things that she'll remember.
Yes,
Yeah. Maybe you start writing her a letter.
that's yeah. She's still in Vermont, but when she maybe
Yeah, you
That
know,
is a-
that was such a beautiful tradition, and I think I've shared it with people. I've told people about your father's and your tradition and how you would write this letter every Sunday, and it really, really touched me. I thought it was very special.
Yes.
You know,
Well,
and
these letters, every time when I would receive a letter, especially when I was out of the country, I would just feel so loved. I would feel sometimes hugged in a giant bear hug. But he would tell me all the news, so I'd feel like I was part
You
of
were
the
there.
family back home. And
Yeah.
and you know, he might tell me a joke, or he would tell about his philosophies, and he would never tell me what to do. But he was so curious. He asked me a lot of questions. He wanted to know all the details of what I was doing, and just so supportive. So.
And that kind of, I'm sure, helped you to be even more curious. You know, I mean, to really dig a little deeper
Sure.
in
Yeah.
everything that you did.
I
you know,
I think I have that strongly from my dad, my curiosity, and I don't think that I'll ever, you know, kind of grow out of that. And so I'm always ready for an adventure. And
oh, I can tell. I mean, you're just an amazing woman. You really are. I'm just so thrilled to know you. And now, what would you say to someone who's thinking, you know, maybe they have a story inside? What would you recommend for them? What would be your advice?
My advice would be to start writing right now, is to put it down in writing and to keep at it, to just be diligent about it. And also know that there's other people that really would appreciate you writing these things down, especially people are coming to me and writing me emails, and they're calling me up and saying, you know what, I'm going to write about my family and about my life, and so I'll have it for my kids.
Yeah.
And so it's
Well, you know, that's so important. I think everything is going by so quickly today, you know, and with all the technology and everything, and all of these things that we did, they're going to be gone, and our children and grandchildren are not going to have a clue of what it was like.
Right.
So just writing it down, whether it becomes an official book or not,
Right.
is just a really, and someone said, recommended that when you write, don't reread it, just keep writing.
Right. I think
Is that
that's the
true?
initial thing, is just to write it all down and just to keep writing. Just keep your pen to the paper and just let it flow. And don't worry about the correctness of it at the beginning. Just let it go,
Just
and
get
put it all down there.
Put it all out there.
Yeah, because those feelings and those details, those go away. So if you don't write it down right when you have the inclination, you know, they're not there maybe
They're
later
lost.
on.
Yeah.
So I think that's really precious. I would encourage anyone to write write their stories down.
And I think just to be gentle with yourself, as you say, don't edit, just write.
Exactly.
And then someone else can edit it later.
Right.
You know, but
Yeah.
you don't want to lose those feelings
Right.
that are just so, so important. I have just so enjoyed knowing you. I'm so glad
you.
that we're friends, and I love your story, and I think it's a wonderful story to share with people. And do you have any other little something that you'd like to share with our audience before we go?
I just feel so grateful that I had such a start in life with my dad, and so it inspires me every day just to try to be a better person, to try to spread the kindness and the caring and the compassion that he had, and to be a good listener. So I'm so glad that I wrote it and that I continued, that I persevered and put it out in a book form, because I've received so many comments from people who have gained little bit different things from it.
Yeah.
Someone said, you know, this is a book that helps people, you know, to become better fathers and
Absolutely.
maybe a
Parents.
better person.
A better parent, or even a better child.
Right.
You know, to really think about your parent and to think about the connection there, and not take them for granted.
Right.
You know, and I think that that's a beautiful story. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you
This has
so
just
much for
been
having
a
me, Sally.
wonderful, wonderful time, and thank you for this. The book is every Sunday. And for those of you out there, do you have a story inside of you? If you do, put the pen to paper, just like Donna said, and get started. I think I might do that too. So until next time, keep talking. Bye-bye.